All right, folks, we have been covering one of the biggest national security breaches in modern American history, aka Signalgate, aka Whiskey-gate, as some people have referred to it, WhiskeyLeaks. To talk about this, though, this disaster by the Trump administration, I'm bringing in Congressman Dan Goldman of New York's 10th District to unpack all this because, Congressman, this is a genuinely insane story with national security implications and demonstration of the Trump administration's potentially lethal incompetence. So can we unpack all this? What was your reaction when you heard about this story?
I guess I would say it was shock, but not surprise. I think that the uh, disqualification of Pete Hegseth was known long before he was confirmed. And, what burns me up, of course, is that he's been going on this tour talking about how the Department of Defense will now be purely merit-based when he is the most unmeritorious Secretary of Defense, clearly unqualified, and is going to and has already jeopardized the lives of Americans. The reason why this is so problematic is, I think, really twofold. First of all, by disclosing this information on an unclassified platform that is very likely being intercepted in real time by one of our adversaries, risks the lives of the Americans who are on that mission. And if, for example, Iran was tracking this in real time and they passed along these plans to the Houthis could have prepared much differently for this attack, had a secret counterattack ready, and killed American pilots and perhaps others. So just the fact of doing this in such a reckless way jeopardizes the lives of Americans. But it goes deeper than that. And this is really where I want the American people to understand how this relates back to every one of us. By being so lax, likely violating the law in terms of our classified information. And as a prosecutor, I can tell you that it's almost never the first time when you are actually caught. That what Pete Hegseth is doing is jeopardizing not only our servicemen and women, but all of our sources and intelligence providers. And I say providers because that's our allies who share intelligence with us, especially what's called the Five Eyes, which are five countries, including the United States, that have who share a lot of intelligence, but also our own sources. Because a British member of parliament has already said this, that they need to reevaluate the degree to which they share their intelligence, because if it's going to be treated with such a lack of care, then it's going to jeopardize the British sources and other sources of information. And that could also result in lost lives, in deaths. But how it affects us is that if our intelligence gathering is so diminished and is reduced so much by the fact that nobody can trust our government to keep classified information secret, we lose a tremendous amount of our ability to defend our country. And it increases dramatically the likelihood of a terrorist attack occurring on US soil. And where, we don't know, how, we don't know. But I can tell you, as a member of Congress who gets classified briefings, there are terrorists trying to attack us on a regular basis. And unbeknownst to the American people, our intelligence services and law enforcement are able to thwart that because of our excellent intelligence. And if we lose that, we lose a lot of our ability to stop those attacks.
So there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, so not only did this, potentially endanger the lives of the operators who conducted the successful raid, but it also has sweeping implications for the future because our allies, on whose intelligence we rely, because it's not like we use entirely our own, as cooperative with other nations, We have jeopardized those relationships and potentially made America more vulnerable. What's interesting, Congressman, is I've been hearing a lot of cope from the Trump administration, a lot of lies. First, a lot of lies from Trump administration officials and MAGA Republicans, including many of your colleagues. Oh, okay, they weren't war plans. Okay, they were war plans, but they were actually more like attack plans. And you know what? It doesn't matter anyway because the mission was successful. I kind of equate that to like bragging about drunk driving and that you didn't get into a car accident. Oh, well, we didn't crash the car when we were driving under the influence. Do they get any credit for the sheer dumb cosmic luck that they accidentally leaked this information to Jeffrey Goldberg and not somebody else? Do you give them any credit for that?
Of course not. It's absolutely preposterous that they haven't taken responsibility for what is clearly a massive screw up. And there's no other way of looking at it. And I think there's actually, from my perspective, I will say personally, and I think a lot of other people's perspective, their response to this not only is so uncredible and bewildering and lacking any support or evidence, but it also undermines all the different times they use this same playbook of attacking the media as somehow the media is distorting what we all see with our own eyes. And the fact that they dared Jeffrey Goldberg to release the texts is one of the stupidest things you've ever seen. I mean, they thought, and the White House press secretary's statement goes to this point. I mean, it was bewildering when I read it. She said, "We maintain there was no classified information, but of course, we do not think you should release the texts." And it's like, give me a break. You're going to accuse the reporter of, all these terrible things and misleading, misrepresenting. And of course, he's going to release it. And of course, it's going to say exactly what he said it said. And then you see Pete Hegseth saying, oh, it's just another hoax, like the Russia hoax and like the Charlottesville hoax and like the suckers and losers hoax.
None of which were hoaxes, by the way.
And he just proved that point because it's clear this is not a hoax. And they're using the same playbook they use with those others that they claim to be hoaxes, which just validates them as well. So I thank Pete Hegseth in some ways for being so not credible that he not only looks ridiculous in the way he's trying to defend the actions here, but he undermines the bogus defense in so many of the other scandals that have happened under Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's interesting because during an exchange with one of your counterparts in the Senate, Mark Warner, Tulsi Gabbard effectively said the same thing. Oh, none of this was classified. And Warner had the Trump card, pun intended. He was like, okay, well, then if that's the case, go ahead and release the text. And you could just see the deer in headlights look. Like, you're screwed no matter what. Either it was classified and you screwed up, and if you're going to claim it's not classified, then the burden of proof is on you. Some other things, though, one of your colleagues, Jason Crow, in the House Intelligence Committee, he also made a really good case going all the way back to what you said initially, which is that had this leaked in advance to a less patriotic, more nefarious, or even just lazier, person than like Jeffrey Goldberg, like someone who didn't exercise due diligence, the Houthis had the capability with advanced intelligence to endanger the lives of Americans. They have attacked F-18s before successfully. It's not like, it's outside the realm of impossibility. So I think that point is really, really crucial to emphasize. You mentioned Pete Hegseth. Obviously, he is unqualified for his role, but he was not the only actor in this, Congressman. You had Tulsi Gabbard. You had CIA Director John Ratcliffe. You had, quite frankly, your former colleague, Mike Waltz, as National Security Advisor. In some ways, he's as directly implicated as Hegseth because he was the one who added Goldberg in the first place. And I'm curious, given that he was just until recently a former colleague of yours, were you surprised by Waltz's incompetence and then his post-scandal reaction to this? Because I've been surprised. Like his interviews with Laura Ingraham on Fox News, if you didn't see it, you should watch it. Your staff should play it for you. It was the worst interview I've ever seen of a Republican. He was on the verge of a panic attack the whole time. He's kissing Trump's ass in ways I've never seen him do before. Mr. President, this is just a distraction for how great and glorious you are. Can you comment on your former colleague's behavior in all this?
Yeah, and I think you are right to focus on his post-incident behavior even more than the pre-incident. Look, it was incredibly stupid and careless, not only to create a signal chat for something like this, where it was very likely going to involve classified information, but then to include a number that he, at best, the best case scenario for him is the number he didn't know. And that is unbelievably reckless and careless with, even if it were, even if it didn't involve classified information, let's be very clear. These are conversations that every single administration would claim to be privileged under executive privilege. These are conversations that no administration would ever release to anyone. And so, classified or not, the notion that he would be so reckless and careless is incredibly problematic. But what I find in some ways more disconcerting is, I know Mike Waltz. I thought when he was named, I said, look, we could do a lot worse as a national security advisor. He's no Pete Hegseth in my mind. But for him to now take on the Trumpian way of denial and attacking in response to what was so clearly a terrible, terrible lack of judgment at best, is really disappointing. And it takes me back to, I think it was Rick Wilson who said, everything Trump touches dies. And even if you are sort of a reasonable person, when you go and work for Donald Trump in any way, it's the kiss of death. And somehow you lose everything that, every fiber of integrity that you may have. And so it's almost his reaction and the way that he has doubled down, tripled down on what is so clearly not a credible response is disappointing. It's very disappointing, and I think it calls into question his competency and qualifications for the job. Not nearly as much as Pete Hegseth, though.
Well, I want to
absolutely should resign.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. So I know you've got a hard out, so I want to ask you just two final questions. The first is, who of the people involved in this text change would you like to resign? Is it just Pete Hegseth? Are there more? Does it include Mike Waltz? And the second thing is, we are now getting some preliminary polling on this. YouGov is bringing this in, that Americans are reacting more strongly to this, at least according to the preliminary polling, than they did on Secretary Clinton's emails, than Donald Trump's classified documents situation. This is, on substance, I would argue, it is truly, truly awful for the Republicans. But there is a political opportunity here as well to make the American people aware relentlessly of the incompetence of the Trump administration. So can you speak to what Democrats plan to do about that? Who would you like to see resign, if any, and what do Democrats plan to do with this substantively great scandal of the Trump administration?
Well, look, I think very top of the list is Pete Hegseth. The idea that the head of the Department of Defense would be so reckless and disregard not only the law, which prohibits disclosing classified information, but to do it in a way that would jeopardize his own soldiers and in clear violation of DoD policy. DoD has a policy that you may not use Signal. Full stop. And so even if he wasn't releasing classified information, he's violating the policies of his own agency. And you cannot have a leader of an agency, especially as large and important as the Department of Defense, who disregards the law and the policy of that department. And you cannot have somebody ask other people to follow the law and to follow DoD policies when you're not doing it yourself. And so he needs to resign immediately. And we need to put somebody in there who actually is competent and who, if they want, let's base it on merit, because there's no question that Pete Hegseth does not have the merit to be in his position.
And then that last question about what the Democrats plan to do about this substantive scandal. Again, it's not like you're politicizing a nothing burger. This is very real. But Republicans should pay a political price for it. And that's not going to happen unless you and your colleagues make noise about this relentlessly. Do you intend to do that?
It has it has completely consumed Washington this week. It is the top story in every news show. It's something that we are all talking about. I wrote a letter yesterday to Pam Bondi to demand that she appoint a special counsel to investigate this from a criminal perspective, because, of course, distributing classified information, national defense information, is a felony. And we are calling for investigations in Congress. Of course, Donald Trump fired the Inspector General of the Department of Defense, who would ordinarily be doing an investigation. But don't worry, everybody. Elon Musk is on the case.
Oh my
He's
gosh.
going to investigate this. It's a joke. It is an absolute joke. And we are not only not going to stop talking about this, but we are going to focus on how it directly relates to the American people in the way that I said at the beginning, which is that it increases dramatically the likelihood of a terrorist attack on our own soil.
Congressman, I really appreciate you taking the time to warn the American people about the risks of this and the incompetence of the Trump administration. We'll definitely be following this very closely, and I'm sure we'll be speaking again soon. Thank you so much for your
Sounds good,
time.
Josiah. Thanks so much.